Okay, fifth graders, we are continuing right along here in chapter 14. Today, the key word of what we're talking about today is this word right here, quadrilateral. A quadrilateral is a polygon that has four sides. And we're going to be looking at various types of quadrilaterals. Now, this first picture here, which is just a quadrilateral in general, is just a random thing that has four sides. As you can see, if I come over here, I've got one side here, two sides there, three sides there, four sides there. And so it's a four-sided figure. It's definitely not a square or a parallelogram or anything like that. This is just a general quadrilateral, and so we're going to call it just that, a general quadrilateral with four sides. Now, we have different types of quadrilaterals. The first one we're going to focus on is a trapezoid. We recognize a quadrilateral as a trapezoid. First of all of these polygons are closed figures. Everything's going to be connected and closed. Nothing's going to be left open. Okay? So we have a trapezoid. All right? A trapezoid has exactly one side, one set of parallel sides, and you will write all this in your notes when we get into class. But a trapezoid has exactly one set of parallel sides, and you can see, if you don't understand what parallel means, that means if these lines were to continue on forever and ever, they would never touch. And this line here at the top and that line there at the bottom are parallel. If they were to continue forever and ever, they would never cross or intersect. That makes it a trapezoid with exactly one set of parallel sides. We also have a parallelogram. Now, a parallelogram has two sets of parallel sides, where the top and the bottom are parallel, the right and the left are parallel, meaning that this line at the top and this line at the bottom, if they were just to keep going, they would never intersect. Now, of course, my lines are not perfectly straight. We just kind of use our imagination. But you get the idea. The same with the left and the right. If they were to keep going forever, both up and down the way they were, they would never intersect. That makes them parallel. Okay, so a parallelogram has exactly two sets of parallel sides. This next one is a rectangle. You're familiar with a rectangle. You've been studying shapes for a few years now. A rectangle, by definition, has four right angles. That's indicated by these boxes. It's a perfect L. So it's a right angle. It's a 90-degree angle. We talked about that with triangles the other day. It also has two sets of congruent sides. And that's these indicators. We have that in the parallelogram too. These are also congruent. The bottom and the top are congruent. That's the indicator with the one dash. The right and the left are congruent. That's the indicator with the two dashes. So a parallelogram also has two sets of parallel sides. But a rectangle has the four right angles, two sets of congruent sides. The right and the left, the top and the bottom are congruent. The right and the left, right and left, top and bottom, are also parallel. Okay, so a rectangle has four right angles. It has two sets of congruent sides. Congruent means the same. They are the same length. So the top and the bottom are the same length. The left and the right are the same length. They also have two sets of parallel sides, meaning that the left and the right are parallel. The bottom and the top are parallel. The next one is what we call a rhombus. A rhombus, by definition, just has four congruent sides. Doesn't have to have right angles. Nothing else needs to be congruent, but all four sides are the same length, indicated here by the one line through each one. It has the same indicator, so they are all the same length. The last quadrilateral we're focusing on today is a basic one, a square. You understand what a square is. A square has four right angles with the perfect L, and then it has four congruent sides with the indicator of the dash between them. So those are the quadrilaterals we're going to be focusing on. And actually, specifically, what you're going to be doing in your assignment today, it's just this one set of directions that we need to talk about, is this one here, classifying the quadrilateral in as many ways as possible. Because sometimes when we look at quadrilaterals, we say, well, that is and we'll name the quadrilateral that would be appropriate, whether it's quadrilateral, square, trapezoid, parallelogram, rectangle, or rhombus. But oftentimes what we don't realize is that multiple types of quadrilaterals can be given to the same quadrilateral, okay? And so we're going to talk about that. The idea that sometimes a parallelogram can be a rectangle, sometimes a rectangle can be a square. And so we will talk about that and get us to think about those. But we want to understand those definitions, and those definitions from your notes you're definitely going to want to use. So classify the quadrilateral in as many ways as possible. So first of all, we look at number 1. And first of all, I see that all 4 sides are congruent. That's the first thing I notice. They're all 4 meters long. And then I know that a rhombus has 4 congruent sides. So I know for number 1 that I have to have rhombus on the list, because that is a rhombus. Now, I also notice that there are 4 right angles, okay? And a parallelogram that has 4 right angles, okay, and all sides are the same, okay, must be a square. So if it's a rhombus with 4 sides that are all congruent, but yet all the angles are right angles, then that also makes it a square. Now, what I also notice is not only do I have 4 right angles, but I notice that I have 2 sets of parallel sides, the top and the bottom, the right and the left. And I also notice that the top and the bottom, the right and the left, are congruent, which means this also fits the definition of a rectangle. So I need to make sure that rectangle is on the list. And that just goes to show you, 5th graders, that all squares are rectangles. All rectangles are not necessarily squares, but if it's a square, it is definitely a rectangle as well. Now, any of these, the fact that it has just 4 sides tells me straight up this is a general quadrilateral. So I need to have quadrilateral on this list, okay? And when I'm looking at that, I'm thinking, well, okay, what else do I have here? Well, if I look carefully, I will notice that the top and the bottom are parallel, the left and the right are parallel, which means, okay, that this is also a parallelogram. And so when we're dealing with a square, we're seeing that a lot of these come into play. All right, the only one that's left is a trapezoid, and this has 2 sets of parallel sides, so it's not going to be a trapezoid. All right, well, let's look at number 2. Well, first of all, when I look at number 2, I see a 4-sided figure, which means that I need to have quadrilateral on the list. A little cramp for space there. I'm also seeing that the bottom and the top are parallel. The left and the right are not parallel, because if they were to keep going, they would cross down here somewhere. But the bottom and the top are parallel, which means that it has exactly 1 set of parallel sides, which means that this is most definitely a trapezoid. All right, and let me see. All 4 sides are not the same length, so it is not a rhombus. It does not have 2 sets of parallel sides, so it is not a parallelogram. There are not any right angles, so it is definitely not a square. It is definitely not a rectangle. This is just a quadrilateral and a trapezoid. All right, moving right along, number 3. What do we have here? Well, when I'm looking at these, I'm saying, okay, these are not perfect L's. It does not have the right angle indicator. So this is not a square. This is not a rectangle. It has four sides, so it most definitely can be classified as a quadrilateral. The bottom and the top are parallel. The left and the right are parallel. Okay, so it has two sets of parallel sides. That makes it a parallelogram. And since it has two sets of parallel sides, and a trapezoid has exactly one set of parallel sides, it is not a trapezoid. So we've ruled out trapezoid. There's no right angles, so we've ruled out rectangle and square. It's a quadrilateral and it's a parallelogram. The one that's left is rhombus. Well, based on the indicators, I can see that the top and the bottom are not the same length as the left and the right, because these have two and these only have one. That way, I know there are not four congruent sides. Thus, I know number 3 is not a rhombus. So, quadrilateral and parallelogram is what fits. Well, last one, number 4, okay? Well, first of all, if we just kind of start at the top with quadrilateral. It is a four-sided figure. That means it is a quadrilateral. And if you just kind of look at them all one at a time, you can kind of do it pretty basic. Well, a trapezoid, if I look at this, I see that the left and the right are parallel. I see that the bottom and the top are parallel. So it has two sets of parallel sides. A trapezoid only has one set of parallel sides. This is not a trapezoid. Well, once again, if the left and the right are parallel and the bottom and the top are parallel, that's two sets of parallel sides, which means that this is most definitely a parallelogram. But it's a parallelogram that has four right angles as well. And it looks like the top and the bottom are congruent in length. The right and the left are congruent in length. So it appears to fit the definition of a rectangle. Now, I can clearly see that the left and right, are shorter than the top and the bottom, which means that all four sides are not congruent, which means there is no way number 4 can be a rhombus, and since all four sides are not congruent, there is no way number 4 can be a square. That's what you're going to have to do on your assignment today, 5th grade. You're going to be looking at different quadrilaterals and classifying them as many as possible. And as you can see, they're all going to be quadrilaterals. So you got to write quadrilateral for all of them because they're all going to have four sides. But then you're going to have to look at the features regarding the angles and the sides and what's parallel and so forth to figure out which of the other ones, trapezoid, square, parallelogram, rhombus, rectangle, see which ones fit. All right, we'll talk to you later, 5th graders. Bye.